and welcome to Know Your Community. I am State Representative Brenda Carter, serving Michigan House District 29, which includes the communities of Auburn Hills, Pontiac, Keego Harbor, Sylvan Lake, and Orchard Lake Village. A frequently asked question amongst many families is how to afford the rising cost of sending their son or daughter to a college in Michigan. Joining me to help offer a possible solution to that concern is Robin Lott. Robin is the Executive Director of the Michigan Education Trust, which is one of three Section 529 college savings programs offered by the state of Michigan. Robin, thank you for sharing your time. What is Michigan Education Trust contract and how does it work?
MET is our state's 529 prepaid plan. Basically allows families to purchase credit hours at today's cost, and when the child is ready to attend college, we'll pay the actual tuition if they attend a Michigan public college, and we'll pay a refundable amount if they decide to go to a Michigan private college or to out of state. It basically only covers tuition and mandatory fees, though, does not include room and board.
Well, thank you. Who can open a MET account?
So you don't have to be related to the child. It can be a parent, it could be a grandparent, it could be an auntie or uncle, it could just be a friend, maybe, or an organization actually. Organizations can purchase MET contracts and they can help, give back to the community.
Yes. And there's a tax benefit for opening a MET account. Is that true?
That's correct. So that's one of the main incentives for opening a MET account or participating in 529 overall, and that is that in the state of Michigan, we offer an income tax deduction for the total amount that you put into MET in any given year. So let's say you bought a MET contract, we have like a pay-as-you-go option that allows you to put in 1 credit hour, opens the account, and then future contributions of $25 or more at any time. So if you were to do that on a consistent basis, at the end of the year you get an annual statement from us, and that total amount you've put in can be deducted on your Michigan income tax form. The deduction means it's truly a deduction and not a credit, so it's a subtractions to income on your Michigan form that you would subtract the total amount from your income before you calculate the tax that you owe the state.
And I'd like to just dig a little deeper into
Sure.
that, if you don't mind.
Sure.
I have grandchildren, okay? So you're saying that if I open a MET account for each one of my grandchildren and I pay a certain amount, say $5,000 towards their college fund, that at the end of the year I could deduct $15,000?
That's correct. So let's say you have 3 grandchildren and during the year you put $5,000 each. Yes, ma'am. You can deduct $15,000 from your income tax on your Michigan form only for your contributions to the MET account. Absolutely.
That's wonderful.
Yes.
What college expenses are covered by MET? And is it restricted to Michigan colleges only?
So really it only covers tuition and mandatory fees, which really in the world of college educational expenses could represent 33 to 50% of the total cost. So MET should not be the only thing you're saving in based on your college savings goals, of course. If your goal is just to provide tuition, MET might be the great option. But you can also save in other programs as well. And no, they're not restricted to just attending a Michigan public college. However, the maximum benefit is if they attend a Michigan public college, because if they do that, we'll pay actual tuition at the in-state rate. They can, however, use their MET contract to attend out of state, whereby we have them terminate the contract, we send the refund directly to the out-of-state institution, and so no money passes through the hands. If something happens, they get a full scholarship. We either refund the money or they use it right along with their scholarship. And then the MET payment can be applied to room and board. But it's the only time that really MET is used for room and board is in the case of scholarships.
Okay, that's very good to know.
Yes.
What are the 2 other 529 colleges that offer this program?
So we have the MESP, Michigan Education Savings Program. We have the MI 529 Advisor Plan. They're both considered 529 college savings plans, but they're both investment based. So think of them sort of like your 401k accounts for saving for college. Similar theory, you will be able to take a tax deduction, but the tax deduction is capped to $10,000 if you're married filing joint, or $5,000 if you're a single tax filer. They also share the same income tax deduction line as well. So you could, if you're saving in both MET and MESP, then you can actually take both deductions. If you're saving in all three, you'll share that line with MESP and MAP on the same line. But basically with MESP, you are directly saving with that company. We have TIAA CREF that serves as our program manager for MESP. Now your account balance in that program can be used for room and board as well, or books, or supplies, or now computers.
That's excellent. I'm going to ask you to explain for my audience that's watching, what is a 529 program?
Yeah, so 529 is simply the number of the Internal Revenue Code that gives us our tax advantages and allows each state to have a program of that nature. And so pretty much every state in the country has a 529 program, but there's three types of 529s. Prepaid tuition being MET, investment-based being MESP and MAP. So it's just simply the number of the Internal Revenue Code, 529.
Okay, so a tax preparer would recognize
Yes.
529 is something that is a
It's the
sort of,
section. The
Yes.
section of the Internal Revenue Code is 529. Yep.
well,
Great.
that's excellent.
Yes.
Michigan also has a free financial aid program that helps foster children attend college. Can you tell me a little bit about the Fostering Futures program?
Absolutely. It's one of my favorite programs in addition to MET. And so what we found in the community, there's so many young people that have experienced foster care in the state of Michigan. And so we established a scholarship program about 7 years ago. It has evolved to now being not only a scholarship program, but also an endowment fund. So we have 3 events every year. Basically, the student had to have been in Michigan foster care at the age of 13 or above and attend a Michigan college in order to qualify. Based on some state appropriated funds as well as fundraising efforts, the student could be eligible for a scholarship up to $3,000 per year. All they have to do is fill out a 1-page application. And so we are helping benefit those youth by encouraging them to further their education. The statistic is pretty awesome. Not awesome, but it's startling. Because what we found on a national level is that 75% of foster youth or people who have experienced foster care have the desire to pursue higher education. However, only 10% actually pursue it. Remember, they don't have the family support system, or they may not have the family support system that the average student would have. So if they do make it on a college campus, less than 3% are graduating. So in Michigan, we've done some great things. We've increased the age that they can stay in the system longer. We also have about 16 or 17 colleges and universities now that offer a campus coach program, which helps with the retention of the student as well as matriculation. So we're seeing more of those students that actually get on campus, stay, and graduate. But the scholarship really helps them. It's not a lot because they do qualify for other things, but it could be the one thing that keeps them on campus. So when everybody else goes home at Christmas, they have somewhere to go because it can be used for room and board.
Now that's excellent. I believe this is a program that was brought to the Family, Children, and Seniors
Yes.
Committee, where they were extending this program into the CTE and certificate program. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Absolutely, and I thank you so much for your support on that, because my goal and our goal on the Fostering Future Scholarship side is to expand the definition or the ability to use it at trade and technical schools. As you know, we need more qualified people at that level, and these students would be, obviously interested in that as well. We think that it might help increase the number of students that are being educated. We don't expect a big run on the market. I mean, the worst that could happen is instead of giving them $3,000, we might have to give them something less. But then we look to the community and organizations to help us fundraise until we can get more funding for the program, and hopefully that will increase.
Well, I definitely applaud that initiative and that program, and as you know, I supported it because I'm aware of the need to support our foster care children once they are out of high school. And that's when I mentioned the real possibility of them not having an option, that they may end up in the criminal justice
Yeah.
system for lack of familial support.
That's
So,
right. Or
I,
homelessness is really a big thing that we want to avoid at all costs.
yes.
And if just that little bit of incentive could, or yeah, the little bit more of scholarship could incentivize a young person to at least try higher education, be it trade or technical school or community college or 4-year, that's really our goal.
Yes.
Yes.
And just to sidebar that just a little bit, because I'm very, very passionate about our homelessness, our homeless students. So once again, I see this as a real good avenue for supporting and maybe mitigating not only the homelessness, but the real possibility of going in the
Right.
criminal justice system. Where can families go for more information about the Fostering Futures, MET, 529, all the programs we talked about today?
Sure. Well, you might want to start out with setwithmet.com. And set with Met, S-E-T, the word with, MET.com, which I'm sure they're going to put on the screen. If you go there, that's the homepage for the Michigan Education Trust. We actually have links to Fostering Future Scholarship, links to MESP as well as MAP. If you want to go directly to fostering, go to fosteringfutures-mi.com. And that will take you straight to the homepage. We do have some events coming up very soon. In June, we'll be in Grand Rapids at a luncheon. August 8th, Capitol Lawn Pizza Party. Please come out to that. That'll be wonderful. And then in
pizza.
Detroit in September, we have our biggest dinner event at the Rooster Tail. So please come out, support the foster youth, and help a child attain a higher education.
Well, thank you very much, Robin, for informing us about the benefits of considering Michigan's 529 college savings programs and the Fostering Future program to help foster kids as the option to making college more affordable. For more information, please contact my office at 517-373-0475. This is Know Your Community, and I am State Representative Brenda Carter. After the break, David Randels, the Director of Government Relations, Education Policy, and Research for Oakland Schools, will join us to talk about third grade reading.
Okay, who knows the answer?
One day, she may want to be a teacher.
Yes, Mr. Snuggles.
And one day, she'll need to go to college.
That's right.
And yes, you can help her get there with a 529 prepaid college tuition plan from Met. Enroll this month and lock in your child's college tuition at today's rate. So when that day comes, you won't have to worry about what it costs. Start your Met plan right now at metforcollege.org.
With great power comes great versatility. Michigan's 529 college savings programs give you the power to save for your child's education with 3 amazing options: Michigan Education Trust, Michigan Education Savings Program, and MI 529 Advisor Plan. Whether it's prepaid tuition, tax-deferred savings, or an investment advisor, one or more of these programs is right for you. Be a superhero to your child. Learn more at SaveWithMI529.com.
Hello, and welcome back to Know Your Community. I am State Representative Brenda Carter, serving Michigan House District 29. Many communities across Michigan, along with many legislators, are wondering how we can improve our education systems. Attempts such as the third grade reading law have been implemented and proven not to be able to address the problem, but it actually creates new bumps. My next guest is David Randels, Director of Government Relations, Education Policy, and Research for Oakland Schools. Welcome, David.
Thank you, Representative. Glad to be here.
Can you explain why the legislature passed the third grade reading law?
Well, there is a broad consensus in this state among not only legislators, but parents, school board members, people that teach in our schools, people that are administrators of our schools, that Michigan should do more to improve our early literacy. I don't think there's anybody in our state that disagrees with that, and that we can be better when it comes to teaching our youngest students how to read, which is a good thing. We often find here in Lansing that we have broad disagreements even before we start talking about what the problems are that we need to solve. And that's not the case here. I think we are in a place where Democrats and Republicans, parents, teachers, administrators, school board members agree that this state needs to get serious about improving our third grade reading scores and our third grade reading outcomes. It's going to be good for our communities. It's going to be good for our state and our economy. It's going to be good for our students. And I think you have a number of different ideas about how to approach that. The problem, which I think we're here to talk to today about, is that the ways in which previous policymakers and administrations have approached this may be leading to exactly the opposite outcome that we were hoping for. And we really do have a ticking time bomb when it comes to the state law and our children that we're going to have to address. You're going to have to address. I'm going to work with you. Our superintendents and school board members in Oakland County and educators in Oakland County are going to work with you to address this problem. And that problem is that when the legislature passed a sweeping third grade reading law a few years ago, they did two things that were really extraordinary. First, they passed what I think is a really revolutionary reorganization of our elementary education in the state. If you were a parent or a student in first, second, third grade in our state, you are experiencing a different type of service because of this law. And that's a big deal, particularly in a state as diverse as we are. Remember, when you pass laws here that affect our schools, you need to do so in a way that affects not only your district, but districts as diverse as Menominee and Detroit. That's a difficult thing to get right and to pull off, and the legislature has attempted to do that. The other thing that we've done with this law is, and probably even more impactful, is for the first time in, I believe, our state's history, we are going to be using state assessment data. So what I mean by that is MESP, or what used to be MEEP when I was in school. We're going to be using those state tests to really impact the educational outcomes and sanctions applied to our youngest students. We're talking about third graders. We've never done that before. When we talk about high stakes standardized testing in this state, we usually are talking about accountability systems for districts or for the state or for educators, maybe high school students. Mm-hmm. We've never tested, and in this case punished, children as young as 7, 8, 9 years old with these state assessments, and that's what we're going to be doing with this law.
Thank you for that, David. And I can attest to what you just said. Being the former president of Michigan Association of School Boards, I was able to travel all over the state, and I was able to witness firsthand what's going on in school districts and the diversity between cities like Ishpeming, Negaunee, Alpena, go down to Adrian, Jackson. You can't have a cookie cutter, one size fit all for every school district. But I'm really concerned with what you were saying there, David, because if we hold true to this legislation, when will this begin to impact third graders, and how will it impact them?
Great question. So beginning this year, Representative, the students who are enrolling in third grade this fall for the first time, so this year's second graders, as we record this, will be subject for the first time to a retention law, that if they fail their state exam, their MESP exam, they will be potentially retained in the third grade. And what I mean by that is not allowed to advance to become a fourth grader the year after. Nothing like this has ever existed in this state, where the state has decided whether or not a student advances based on the state examination. So that's, if you are a parent of a third grader this year, they aren't subject to this. If you're a parent of a second grader who will be going into third grade next year, they will be subject to this law. So we really have between now and 1 year from now, that's what I mean by a time bomb, to fix this law, because as you know, retention of students is one of the worst educational interventions we can do, and it does not work in creating academic achievement in our students. And we are about to, as one of my superintendents says repeatedly, mandate educational malpractice on these students in this state. And we have between now and June 1st of 2020 to fix this law.
Wow, that's kind of a dire prediction, and considering the fact that we have so many communities across the state that's in poverty. They're impoverished. And I'd like to know, what does this mean to the parents and students in the state? Not just poverty, areas of poverty, but just overall. What does it mean, the bottom line?
Well, for a parent in this state, like I said, if you are a parent of a third grader next year, your student will be taking an assessment, that state assessment, sometime next spring, and you will be receiving information if your student doesn't pass that test that tells you that your student will potentially be subjected to being retained in the third grade for another year. Pretty scary stuff. We believe, based on, and it's hard to get an estimate of exactly how many students in this state that will affect, but we believe that those students who will be subject to that retention are disproportionately in places with high poverty, high special ed needs, high English language learner needs, and that this will disproportionately affect communities where there's a higher percentage of poverty and social economic stress, which makes it just another reason why this is bad public policy that needs to change.
David, I'm really, really concerned about how this law will affect communities and school districts that are impoverished. Can you give us some insight on this, please?
Well, one of the what's going to happen if the law isn't changed is on June 1st of next year, the state of Michigan will send a letter directly to parents whose students have underperformed as they see it on the third grade reading or the English language learner test and the MSTEP. And that letter will say that if you are you as a parent have the right to contact your school district to ask for your options on keeping your student from being retained. We're very concerned that in places where the number of students may be higher for whatever reason than other places, particularly because of socioeconomic status, that the number of students is going to be quantitatively higher than in other places in the state. And we're also concerned, I don't think it's a mystery that many of the students in places with real poverty, they're more transient and are going to be harder to contact, that letter will not find their parents in time for them to actually get to the superintendent's office or to their local district's office to ask for a remedy from the retention. So we think that's going to disproportionately affect parents and students in places of high poverty because of the nature of transient households and the very nature of making it harder to get in touch with parents who live in poverty in some of these places. We will see if, and we hope we don't have to reach that point, but we're very concerned about that, and I know our districts are preparing for that. But if you have a high percentage of your students who need to have those contacts with those parents, it just becomes even harder for those districts to overcome that.
You brought up a very important point. I hope I have time. When you said English language learners, so I know that in our particular district we have over 20% Latina population. They would be disproportionately affected as well, correct?
They're certainly, and this will vary based on the number of years a student has been classified as an ELL, an English language learner student. But there are many concerns with. We're talking about the individual academic levels of very young children.
Yes.
Anyone with children knows that that's not something that works completely along some sort of absolute normal curve. So we're very concerned about all children, but particularly as we start to layer on some of these categories of where they fit within our system.
Thank you, David. And coming from a district that is have economic challenges, I'm really deeply concerned about this because I know the bottom line is it could affect their budget. Because if you have to retain your students back for another year, now you're going through and actually re-educating based on a state mandated test. I need to know what we can do to get rid of this dangerous or change this dangerous law.
The good news is, as I started, there is broad consensus that we need to do something to help our children. There's broad consensus in the education community, and I think growing consensus among both Democrats and Republicans that this is not the right way to do it. We need your help. We need your constituents' help moving forward on a plan that is serious and based on research to help our students. We need a plan that is that pays attention to the adequacy of the resources available for our students, particularly our students who are at risk. The School Finance Research Collaborative gives us a way forward on that, and legislators need to as I know you have, need to familiarize themselves with changes to our funding model that help us provide the right amount of dollars for a student when they arrive. But we also need a change to this very simple backward policy of retaining students in the third grade. It's a very common sense thing to do. We just need to pass legislation to get rid of that particular line item or line in this law, and we can hopefully get serious about replacing it with the right, if we need to, the right kind of interventions that are actually going to help kids. We know what those are. Those are research-based. They exist. They are being implemented in districts across the state. This is a complete move in the wrong direction from what it's going to take to get our students to the place we want them to be in terms of literacy.
Okay, you mentioned a very important point that I want to elaborate on. I know I have a little time here. We need to know what are the things that's working. You mentioned that they're being implemented and modeled in certain school districts across the state. And if you could just give us just a few examples of positive things that would kind of mitigate this law.
Well, so the good news is the research, there's, as you know, volumes and volumes of research on what works in education. There's a researcher whose name is John Hattie, who's a New Zealand researcher. He compiled all of the work that's ever been done on what works in academic achievement in our state. In fact, one of the things we do to hurt children, it's very few things we do in our schools that actually set children back. One of them is actually retention, is what he found. But we know that good trained teachers who know how to pedagogically influence the academic achievement of our students, we know how to do that, and we know that it works. We need to implement those programs across the state, and there is work happening in all of our districts. We just are faced with questions of resources. We're faced with questions of competing directions. For example, when the legislature passes laws and tells districts what to do, that makes it harder for districts to do what works in their local districts for their local students. So we need Lansing to be an assistant to us as we help these students, not someone who is deciding for us how this works best for us.
Well, David, I'd like to thank you so much for coming on this show and giving us in-depth detail of how punitive this reading retention law can be to all students in Michigan, and also giving us an option or a way to look at it through the School Finance Research Collaborative, which is based all over the state, and it's just beautiful that you gave us this information. Thank you once again for coming on this show.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. And to my guests watching, thank you for tuning in to this episode of Know Your Community. If you are a community member of Kegel Harbor, Orchard Lake Village, Pontiac, Sylvan Lake, or Auburn Hills, please contact me if you have any questions regarding the Met College Savings Program, third grade reading retention laws, or if my office can help you with any governmental matter. You can reach me at Brenda Carter at house.mi.gov or by calling toll-free at 517-373-0475. Again, I am State Representative Brenda Carter, and this has been Know Your Community. See you next time.